Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hey everybody, Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature top leaders in hearing and hearing healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Listen Up Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so that they can connect better with friends and family and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about hearing loss is I lost my brother Robbie twice. First to his hearing loss from radiation to his brain tumor, and then when he passed away. I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor that only cares for ears. I'm the E of ENT. I've performed over 10,000 ear surgeries in my career and taken care of many more with hearing loss. I'm very passionate about hearing loss. I founded a hearing center called Listen Up Hearing Center that cares for patients, and written a book by the same name, Listen Up, A Physician's Guide to Effectively Treating Your Hearing Loss. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to listenuphearing.com. That's listenuphearing.com. I have a really great, interesting guest today. That's Keenan Tully. His mission is to spread awareness about hearing loss and promote motivation to people of all ages. Keenan grew up with hearing loss and was bullied throughout his schooling career in England. His mission is to spread awareness to both teachers and other students, to tell stories about how his hearing loss held him back academically, and to spread awareness to teachers about how students with hearing loss go through life day to day. His organization is called UnDEAFeated. It's his second entrepreneurial endeavor, and Keenan's going to share with us stories how he overcame the stigma of hearing loss in order to motivate himself in business. Keenan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is really great.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So tell me a little bit about your story in hearing loss and your journey. Obviously, I made a reference to it, but as I look in the background, we've got the name of your organization and a tire and stuff. So there's a lot to unpack just in the background. So tell me your story, Keenan.
Absolutely. So I was born in the UK with perforated eardrums, which have only just recently started to heal over. But my parents never actually knew that I had a hearing loss until I got to around about the age of 11 or 12. Just because as a kid, I guess I didn't really know any better about what I was hearing until I got to that age where I was in school and noticing that I was missing out on stuff. That's when my parents then started to notice it too. So I then got my first set of hearing aids when I was 12. I got them through
That's a tough age to get hearing aids.
Yeah. And before that, I had 2 sets of grommets or tubes that fell out really early, like within a couple of weeks. So I got my first set of hearing aids when I was 12. And I got them from the NHS, so the National Health Service in England. So they were the big brown bananas, as they're called. Really, really big things. But I mean, at that age, I didn't think that would be an issue wearing hearing aids. Like, sure. I didn't know that I was going to get bullied for wearing hearing aids. And then, first day of school, I went into school wearing them, and there was some backlash from it from other students, and I was getting bullied. And then something happened to me, which was kind of a main driver in why I built this brand. I was 14 and I was sat in class, and my teacher told me to take my hearing aids out because they were distracting other students. And right. and
feeding back? Was there feedback? Is that why? Or
no, I think just kids were looking at them, pointing, talking about them. And so, I mean, that's what I think it was, but I mean, still to this day, I don't really know why the teacher took that kind of approach instead of talking to me about it or trying to educate
you
kids or supporting me. Right. Exactly. So, but me being a 14-year-old kid in school, just doing what the teacher told me to do, I didn't really have the guts, I guess, to own up for myself. And so, I took them out, and then I never touched my hearing aids again until I was about 20 years old when I got another set of hearing aids. So it was either 20 or 21 years old, so 2 years ago. So I went that whole 6 or 7 years without wearing hearing aids just because I built up a big stigma around them. And, I was worried about what people would think of me wearing hearing aids. And it was in that time that I found racing. So driving race cars, and that was a massive release for me because I could throw my helmet on and I could fit in, blend in with everyone else. I looked the same as everyone else. We're all out there wearing helmets, driving race cars. Everyone is equal, right? So I didn't really have to worry about speaking to people. I could just throw my helmet on and, be in my own world, I guess, for 30 minutes to an hour at a time. So fast forward to now, I moved from England to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is kind of the whole hub of NASCAR, which is what I want to get into. And that's my dream, is to be a NASCAR driver one day. So I moved here by myself. And it was in that time that I also built this brand as well. So I built the brand based around my experiences with hearing loss and how I'm using my stories to motivate other kids and teens to go and chase their dreams as well. So
that's really great. Not to bring up some of the negative sides, but what type of things did you experience in school from your students? I mean, just so I think people are aware of what type of things. I mean, they are usually pretty sad. So, I mean, if you'll share them, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of bullied in general, just because as a kid, I was quite large as a kid. So I was overweight as a kid anyway. So I was bullied for that. But then when I got my hearing aids, I was bullied for wearing my hearing aids as well. And it was the same sort of stuff, like being pushed around and tripped over, that type of stuff. So, yeah.
And so you wear hearing aids now?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so not for anything, but so what was the, how'd you get back into them? Does that make sense? In other words, I mean, obviously somebody discouraged you from wearing them. And then at some point, a lot of this comes down to what we would call self-advocacy, right? Where you realize that you need them for you, regardless of whether or not a teacher or somebody else says don't wear them, you're going to wear them no matter what. And so that's a really important mind shift. How did that happen for you?
Honestly, growing up as a teen, I found myself that I was closing myself off from people because I wasn't, I didn't really want to go and hang out with friends in big groups because I know that I would feel left out if I wasn't wearing them, but then I was scared to wear them, so I eventually got to that point where I was like, I should probably start wearing these because I'm missing out on a lot. And if I can have a hearing loss and wear hearing aids and still show people that I'm chasing my dreams and doing things like that and still racing and doing all these awesome things, why not? So I started wearing them again. And I was kind of past the point of not, I kind of got over the whole worried about what I would look like. I didn't really care what people thought of me. So something just kind of switched. I was like, that was just a teacher who wasn't properly educated, I suppose. Why should I let him hold me back in chasing my dreams? So something just kind of switched in my brain one day, and I started wearing my hearing aids again. And
no, I think that's great, and I think that's actually very generous of you to characterize your teacher as just not being well educated, which is probably true.
Right. Yeah.
And so did race car drive? I mean, obviously, there's an element of not being afraid that makes people effective race car drivers. I think that's part of the profession, right? You're willing to drive at several hundred miles an hour within a foot or a couple inches of another car. Do you think that influenced your kind of not afraid of wearing hearing aids?
That's probably accurate to say. Yeah. I mean, you said it. It's, people that drive race cars, they kind of have an element of no fear. It takes a lot of guts to drive a race car. Driving inches or even pushing and being pushed at the same time, going over 100 miles an hour. It's quite scary. So there probably was an element of that helped influence my decision to start wearing hearing aids again. But then, I mean, the biggest part was that I wanted to really start wearing them again to then show other kids and teenagers that they can do the same thing with a hearing loss. So that was the main driver for it. So
does your hearing loss affect your ability to drive? In other words, not hearing sounds, being more aware of sounds, does that affect you at all? Or
Yeah, so obviously, us race car drivers, we wear earbuds and then we wear a helmet on top. So that blocks out a lot of the noise from cars around you, but people with good hearing can still hear all the cars around you and cars that are behind you, so you can kind of tell where they are. I can't. I can only hear my race car. So I'd say it's probably made me a better race car driver because I'm being more visually aware and I'm looking at things more than other drivers are, and I'm feeling more of what's going on inside the car. So I'm using my body and my hands more to feel what the car is actually doing and feel for where those other cars are around me. So I'd say it's probably been a positive for me with my racing. So yeah.
That's great. So how does one end up in race car driving? Like, so you're in high school and then now
Yep.
you're a professional race car driver. Tell me,
Yep.
I mean, it's just, I don't know how one gets from one to the other. So how did you get into this?
I guess everyone has a different kind of route that they take. You know, some kids are born with
Race
really,
car parents
really
or families, right?
really rich families and they can get into it straight away. Other people have to work harder for it and start at a much, much lower level and work their way up. For me, it was my cousin actually raced, who at the time I didn't really know too much about him. I knew that he raced, and then my dad was like, "Oh, let's just go and watch him one day." So I went and watched him race, and straight away I smelled the race fuel, I smelled
You're
the
like,
oil,
that's awesome. I'm in.
I smelt the tires. I was like, yes, this is for me. So yeah. So it was from that point on. I was doing all different types of side jobs as a 10-year-old, like cutting grass and doing the dishes and stuff like that to earn some pocket money. And then I bought my first race car for £500 or $500. So I bought my first race car at 11 years old.
Wow.
For $500, which was extremely cheap and it needed a lot of work, but we got it. My dad was kind of like, if you buy the car and work hard for the car, I'll help you with the rest. So that's kind of how it started. And then just from there, you start developing your skills, you start learning more about racing, and you make your way up the ranks to the point where I was having teams from here in the US offering me to come over and race for them, which I did a few times, and then I decided to make the move. So
do you race for a team now?
not currently. We are putting something together to go racing next year. So that's the other thing with racing as well. It takes a lot of funding. Obviously, it's an expensive sport. So partners are a massive thing in racing, and people that want to partner with you to help you grow. So that's what we're putting together right now.
And so how do you think your resilience from dealing with your hearing loss has helped you? I mean, so there's obviously, let's say, navigating the car on the track, and it sounds like there's a lot of navigation off the track. And I would suspect that some of the things that you've learned how to deal with hearing loss have helped you with the off the track navigation as well. Has it helped you?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with my story with race cars, when I first got into racing, we didn't know anything about cars at all. Like, we didn't know how to change a wheel or anything. So as you know, and still I'm still learning today, even today, learning about how to fix them, how to set them up for the racetrack. And I think I'd say my resilience with trying to overcome my hearing loss and my stigmas and challenges have gone into my racing as well, and I guess made me focus more on smaller details with setting the car up, getting the car ready, how a car handles and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in terms of UnDEAFeated, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, obviously it's in your background and on your shirt. So what we talked a little bit about, but what was your thought into starting the organization, and how does it work?
I had a lot of parents reach out to me when they realized that I had a hearing loss and I was a race car driver, and they were asking, that their kids were getting their first set of hearing aids in the next few weeks, and they were worried about that their kids were worried about if they'll be able to get their dream job, if they'll do well in school, if they'll be able to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something like that, or if they'll have friends and stuff like that. And they were coming out to me for advice, to share my story with it, to try and show, to show their kids that it's okay to wear hearing aids and to have a hearing loss. There's people out there with a hearing loss doing awesome things. Not only me driving race cars, but loads of people, loads of athletes, everyone, business owners with a hearing loss who are successful. It's okay to wear hearing aids. And so from that, I then thought, well, I need to do something that puts it into like a actual brand that is based around motivating kids and teenagers, because it's obviously quite a big issue. Even now, there's still a lot of stigma built up around hearing aids and hearing loss. And so I thought, I want to do something about it, and I want to share my stories, and I want to share the stories of other people who are successful with hearing loss and with hearing aids. So that's where the idea for the brand came from. So as a bit of wordplay, it's UnDEAFeated, but spelled DEAF. So it's kind of showing that I'm not letting hearing loss defeat me. That's kind of where the name for the brand came from. And so the brand, I have my own podcast as well called the UnDEAFeated Podcast, where I'm bringing on other hard of hearing athletes and business owners, where they're coming on and sharing their stories as well. And it's really a platform for those people to come on and share their stories to motivate other kids and teenagers and adults of all ages, honestly, to still go and chase your dreams. So
and do something about your hearing loss, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for us, one of the hardest populations was the age group you described, and that is 13 to 21. Really tough to get people to wear their hearing aids. Really tough. And so your story is not uncommon, and your willingness to influence people is great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's quite sad that it is so tough to get this kind of age group to wear their hearing aids, because if you think about it now, everyone is wearing something in their ears, whether it's earbuds or AirPods or something. Everyone is wearing something. So it's going to be an uphill battle to break down the stigma. I think it's going to be a constant uphill battle, but people need to realize that it's okay to wear hearing aids. And half the time, I mean, they're getting so discreet now as well, that a lot of the time people don't even realize that you're wearing them. I think there's still a stigma built up for this age group that think if I wear them, people are going to think I'm old or something.
Well, but I guess the other side of that is if you have any stories, there were probably times where you weren't wearing hearing aids, where people thought of you poorly, right? And so it's not always just the hearing aids; it's the so the hearing loss. How do you have any stories where that impacted you, when you weren't doing something about
it? I would say just in general, growing up as a teen, I was just so closed in, I suppose. I'd lock myself in my room, and I guess I built up quite a lot of depression from that as well, growing up as a teen. And that's something that my family noticed. I didn't really have any friends growing up because I was so closed in. I would lock myself away in my bedroom for a lot of my teen years, just because I was scared about being in those groups and feeling left out. But then the flip side of that is I was making myself left out anyway, So so parents definitely realized that something was up. So that was kind of another big reason for me to start wearing my hearing aids again. So
I would expect that somebody who's introverted is not going to be effective at getting into NASCAR. I assume you kind of have to, it's not just driving on the track. There's kind of the ability to work the room and promote yourself and things like that. I assume that that's an important component of all this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, the whole media side of race car drivers as well. You constantly have a camera in your face. So, only in the last few years has that type of stuff really started to happen for me, where I've been putting myself out in front of a camera on social media, showing my face, sharing my story. And so it was I was a bit worried about that. I was worried. I was quite nervous about doing that, but as soon as I started doing it, I was fine. It was weird. It was I was fine sharing my story. I was really excited to be sharing my story. So something in there changed when I started wearing my hearing aids, and suddenly I had massive amounts of confidence, and I was putting myself out there and putting my story out there. And 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been doing that. So
No, yeah. Well, I suspect you kind of have to get your story out there. I mean, in other words, that's part of the personality of the driver, because part of NASCAR fandom is people like the person, right? They're caught up, not just the car, it's the driver, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So I realized that, if I'm going to take my racing to the next level, and take my brand and just my confidence in general to the next level, it's something that I need to start doing. And the brand was a great way for me to be able to do that, so yeah.
So I assume, based on what's over your left shoulder, it's UnDEAFeated.org, is that right?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. And is that where they'll find your podcast and all the information about your organization?
Yep. So if you go on UnDEAFeated.org, there's my podcast, there's my merch store, I have a blog as well, I have a newsletter sign up, and then you can find all information about me, all about my stories, all my videos, everything on there. So, yeah.
Sure. And so when you're how much time are you spending driving a day?
Driving, like racing?
Yeah. You got to practice, right?
Sorry?
You have to practice.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, you kind of go to the racetrack and then you have about 30 minutes to practice, and then you're going straight into a race. So if you've been to a track that you've never been to before and you have no idea how to get around it, you have about 30 minutes to get it done, and then you're out there with 30 other cars racing. So that's quite intimidating. So you have to be really, really quick to pick things up and get your car running right and driving right. So yeah.
And are you on a travel circuit? Is that what you're doing with your driving?
Yeah, so we're putting together a deal to run in a primarily southeast series. It travels around North, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, all multiple tracks around there. Which right here is a massive NASCAR area as well. So all the drivers, all the teams are all in this town that I live in as well. So we're going to be traveling around the whole southeast, and then if we can, try and get out to the West Coast as well and run some races out there. So
that's great. And so if you could talk to yourself when you took your hearing aids off, that time you talk about, what would you tell yourself at that moment to help in that circumstance? I mean, because that's kind of the big moment we're talking about. So if you could, I mean, obviously it's a hypothetical, but if you could go back and talk to Keenan again and say, hey, what advice would you give that 14-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, knowing what I know now, I would have said, like, you have a bright future ahead of you. You're going to be a professional race car driver one day. You're going to be motivating kids and teenagers to go and chase their dreams as well, which I have done. And I would have said, there's nothing wrong with wearing your hearing aids. Like it's so many people out there in the world today are doing awesome things with a hearing loss, with hearing aids, and taking your hearing aids out, you're going to make yourself closed in and depressed, and that's not the life that you want. So yeah, I would have said something like that.
Sure, that's great, and that's why you have UnDEAFeated. That's
exactly. Yep.
And do you have public appearances? I mean, obviously you're on podcasts and you have podcast episodes. I assume you do other things like appearances or things like that to spread the word.
Yeah. So I try and get to as many hearing loss events as I can, and then also the other side of that with racing as well. A big part of what I'm doing just in the racing community is also spreading awareness about hearing protection, because that's something that isn't talked about in in the racing community. So I went to a NASCAR race a few months ago, and I was surprised that how hard it was to just find a simple set of foam earplugs, and there wasn't any signs trying to remind people to wear hearing protection, which is crazy because it's the loudest sport in the world. And that's so that's what I'm really trying to push as well, is push for hearing protection as well, because the more you can protect it, the less likely you are to have a hearing loss. And especially with all the recent studies as well linking hearing loss to dementia and stuff, that's something I'm really pushing for too. So so I'll try and get out to as many hearing loss events as possible, and like the HLAA walk for hearings as well. So yeah.
You know how those foam are kind of that orange color? You know what I'm talking about? You should paint your car that color.
I should just have one big foam earplug driving around the track.
Right. That's right. And then you can put all of your sponsors on it. But you should have a big foam colored race car. I'm not so sure that'll get past all the marketing people, but that's my idea.
Well, they have the ones that are orange and green as well. I think that would look pretty cool.
I mean, but those colors, it's the ear protection car. So
there you go. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to put that forward to someone. Yeah.
It's kind of an unusual color. So,
right,
well, this is great, Keenan. I really admire the work you're doing, and I think the population that you're targeting is a really population that needs more awareness and outreach and support to try to do things about their hearing loss. I would love to tell you that your story is unusual in terms of what happened to you in high school. It's not. I mean, being hearing impaired to become a race car driver, that's pretty unusual. But the story of with the teacher and all of that is unfortunately all too common. And really, that concept of self-advocacy is so important. I mean, you have to be willing to say, like, I didn't hear you, or excuse me, and not just pretend. I mean, even in your world, right? I mean, I assume you figured out something with your guys when you communicate from the car to the pit, but obviously if you hear the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, that changes the whole outcome of the race, right?
Yeah, well, that was quite a scary thing that happened last year. I was actually testing a car, so in a practice session, luckily I was out on the track by myself, no other cars out there, and so my crew chief said something over the radio. I thought he shouted fire like 3 times, and that's what I heard. So I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could. I span out, jumped out of the car, and they were kind of looking at me like, "What?
Like, what happened?"
I was like, "I thought you said fire." so I mean, that was. I mean, I can kind of laugh about it now, but if something like that would have happened in a race and there was other cars around me, that could have been quite dangerous, So thankfully now, I'm soon getting a set of sound gear earbuds. They make these racing earbuds that are just much more powerful than the generic ones that most drivers use. So I'll thankfully be able to hear more clearly what my crew chief and team are saying, because that's that voice in your ear when you're driving is just as important as what you're seeing through the windshield, so to have that voice in my ear and to not hear clearly what he's saying is quite dangerous. So yeah.
That's a a great example. Well, Keenan, this has been great. We look forward seeing you on the circuit and racing around. Keenan, what's your favorite sound?
It's gotta be engines.
I think so, yeah.
Gotta be race cars, yeah, for sure, yeah.
And if people want to find you, Keenan, how would they find you?
So you can go to UnDEAFeated on Instagram, also on Facebook as well, and it's spelled DEAF. So you can go on there, and then also my website, undefeated.org, and you can find everything about me with my podcast and everything on there. So you can learn more about my story on there too. Sign up for the newsletter, everything. So
yeah, people should go check it out. That's great. Well, again, this has been a great visit with you. Congratulations on realizing your dream, and I'm sure you're going to do well to practice and ascend up the race car world. And we look forward to seeing you on NASCAR and doing all of that great stuff.
thanks so much. Thank you for having me on.
Have a great day. Thanks again, Keenan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.